Hey everybody, welcome back. I've been getting a lot of requests for the Dutch bucket update, and as you can see here, we're late in October and we've had a couple killing frosts, and it really wreaked havoc with the tomatoes. Put them down pretty fast, but there are still a ton of red tomatoes on there, and I'll show you what we're going to do with those in just a little bit. But this particular system has done very well, exceeded my expectations, and the tomatoes did very, very well. And at this point, I believe we have jarred somewhere around 130 or 140 quarts of tomatoes. When we did this in the past, the same amount of tomatoes, growing in the dirt, we would generally get 40, maybe 45 jars, depending if it was a good year. We just about tripled that with the amount of tomatoes we got, and I was very pleasantly surprised with that. But the ideal situation would be to have these in a greenhouse, which if I can get something done among all my other projects, I'd like to get a greenhouse going and get these started earlier and let them go a little bit later in the season. But I've got a lot to do, so I don't know what's going to happen. But we'll try and get a greenhouse going. And right now I'm going to pick some of these tomatoes, try and get the vines cleaned up here, and we'll start breaking it down. Okay, I picked a bunch of tomatoes here, ripe ones, a couple green ones in there, a couple stems of the tomato plants, and I got a 5-gallon bucket, and nothing goes to waste here. So we're not going to jar these because we're out of jars and we had a frost, and I don't like to jar them after we've had a frost. Changes the flavor a little bit. So we'll head over to the other barn and we'll feed them to the chickens. I'll show you how they're doing, and I think they're about 6 weeks old. I'll give you a look at those guys for anybody raising backyard chickens. I'll show you what mine look like and give you a couple tips. Okay, let's head over to that other barn now. Okay guys, here we are over at the chicken barn, and I think I got about 60 of them in there right now, about 6 weeks old. We'll head in there, feed them some tomatoes, and check their food supply, see how they're doing. Okay, I think I've shown you these guys before. We raised quite a few of them throughout the year. These are the Cornish rocks, fast-growing broiler chicken, and they get their first feeding about 5 a.m. and then it's I think about 10 or 11 o'clock right now. I give them some snacks, some vegetables, cucumbers, tomatoes, whatever I got. And a critical thing with these guys is you don't want to feed them any longer than 12 hours. So they'll have food for 12 hours and then no food for 12 hours. And it's critical like that because they grow so fast. They'll get leg problems, and they could just up and die on you real fast. So a couple more weeks on these guys and then we'll process them. Anybody wants to see the process, let me know. Be happy to show you. I'll get some big guys in there. I think you can see that one. That one's about 12 weeks old. That one will probably dress out about 12 pounds or so. Most of them will dress out about 8 or 9 pounds. There's another big guy there moving in. We do have some big birds. We'll probably have a couple 15-pounders for Thanksgiving birds for people that like chicken instead of turkey. And you can see they're munching down on those tomatoes. And like I say, nothing goes to waste around here, so that's why they've got the vegetables. The first batch was raised on a lot of cucumbers and tomatoes, and these guys are catching the tail end of our tomato crop. And everybody's doing pretty good. Okay, if anybody's raising chickens at home, you probably recognize this little contraption here. This is just about 18 inches high, and there's another one there on the bottom. and it's got wire mesh around it and a top, and it's what they call a chicken tractor. And you basically put that in the field and move your chickens to a new piece of your pasture every day. But you can see I've had to put some vinyl siding on there to keep the critters out, and I've completely abandoned the chicken tractor idea. I keep them in the barn now, and I bring them the greens and the food that I want them to eat, and there's quite a bit of difference rather than having them just in the field eating everything. So I control what vegetables, and we feed them a lot of greens, but I control it and I bring that to them. And we don't have any more trouble with the raccoons. We used to have real bad trouble and a lot of losses with raccoons and skunks and possums and fisher cats we got around here. There's been remnants of bear scat everywhere lately, and so there's bears roaming around. Not too often, but they will do a number on some chickens if they find them. We got the coyotes real bad, so they've been doing much better in the barn rather than these chicken tractors, and these are going to the scrap right now. I'm not going to use these again. They didn't work out for me in my particular area with the amount of predators we have. But the chickens are doing well, and like I say, if you want to see the processing or how that's done, or if you're getting started yourself, be happy to show you. Just send me a comment. Okay, let's head back over to the tomatoes, and I'll show you a few more things on the Dutch bucket system. Okay, we got to clean up our buckets here, and if you remember at the beginning of the season, we used rock for a growing media. I like the rock because you don't have to put a filter in there. If you use perlite or something like that, you've got to put like a sock in there so you don't lose it all down your drain. And so I like the rock, and then we just take the rock and we can save it for next year. We just throw it in a bucket and save it. And the bucket we could save, we could use that for many years. So I'm going to go dump the rock out and show you what the root system looks like. Okay guys, we dumped the rock out. Here's our tomato plants. You can see I had 3 of them in there. I think you can see this okay. You can see how fine that root system is. There's some excess rock. We'll save all our rocks. What I did was start these in net pots just to keep the rocks from beating up the tender tomato plants. I put them in that net pot and then put those in there and then put the rocks around them. You can see in there I had 3 tomato plants. They all did extremely well. If you keep the nutrients to them, there's plenty of room in there. You could put, I've got some of them with 4 plants in them. You could put 1 plant, 2 plants, whatever you want to do. I had so many plants I needed to put them in a small amount of buckets. I used a white bucket, and there's a little bit of mud and residue from when I very first put the plants in there. But there's no algae, there's nothing that's going to harm the plant in there. The white bucket worked out fine. The plants did, like I said, amazingly well. We've got a super crop of tomatoes, and like I say, you won't get this kind of root system in the dirt. This is a super fine system. It draws in the nutrients super fast and gets it right to the fruit. So if you're thinking of doing some Dutch bucket tomatoes, by all means try it. It's a very nice setup. Like I say, a greenhouse would be a little better situation, but this worked fine for me. We're going to break down all the tomatoes and stuff once I'm done picking them for the chickens. Clean out our buckets, stick those in the barn, and get ready for next year. And like I say, don't be afraid to try it. Just make sure you have a good water source. We had about 50 plants here, and I had a bunch of cucumbers, and during the hot days of July I would go through 50 gallons of water a day. The plants were just drinking and drinking, and you need a good water source. We didn't water them off the house because they're using so much water. I've got a well in the back that I use for livestock and stuff like that, and I ran a separate circuit right here to the tomatoes. And like I say, I was filling up a 50-gallon drum once a day. And so make sure you have a good water source if you're going to do a large amount of tomatoes or cucumbers or something that's really heavy with water, because they're going to drink it. And keep up with your nutrients. If you're going to do a large volume of tomatoes, don't buy the pre-mixed stuff. Mix your own. Get the Master Blend fertilizer. Mix your own. It'll be much cheaper in the end. And these are just some things I've learned. Like I say, this is my first year doing it. Super happy with it, and I know you will be too. So any questions or anything like that, I'm not an expert on it, but I can help walk you through it if you are just starting. Okay, well, that's the tomatoes for the season. And if you like the video, hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel if there's stuff you're enjoying seeing. And if there's anything you'd like to see, just send me a comment. I'll be happy to get it out there for you. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.